The extensive search continues for victims in the rubble of Lahaina. We're learning more about those who have already been publicly identified. 79-year-old Buddy Jantoc, a Hawaiian musician, was one of the first victims to be identified. The New York Times says he once toured with Carlos Santana. His granddaughter says she had just spoken to him on the phone about her daughter's birthday party the day before the fires.
He liked that laid back, do whatever he wanted to, and played music up until that whole thing hit. My husband even played music with him on the stage at Kaanapali. They had their own little bond because with music, um, and it was just his whole lifestyle there that he enjoyed. He would make friends with anybody, like Mr. Aloha, everywhere we went in Maui. They would just talk so highly of him.
Other known victims are 68-year-old Franklin Frankie Trejos of Lahaina, whose remains were found draped over his golden retriever. Alabama native Carol Hartley was last seen in the backyard of her Lahaina home. Her family says a search party found her remains over the weekend. Authorities also named 74-year-old Robert Dickman, 71-year-old Melva Benjamin, 90-year-old Virginia Dofa, and 79-year-old Alfredo Galanado, all from Lahaina. To help identify loved ones, people are urged to get DNA cheek swabs at the Family Assistance Center in Kahului.